Now, the Big Five on the Elias Mecco Show, brought to you by investment advisor Richard Lapointe of CIBC Wood Gundy. Richard Lapointe can always be reached at 847-6324.
Shout out Ahunsik. Shout out Brassard. Shout out Point Claire. Shout out Montreal East. Shout out RDP. And a shout out, yes, once again, I'll do it 2 days in a row, to the folks in Hampstead. They're listening to the Big Five, not the mayor. And we thank them for that. It's time for the Big Five. Trudie Mason is in studio. Hi, Trudie.
Good morning.
And of course, Jean-Marc Fournier is on the line from an undisclosed location. Hi, Jean-Marc.
Hello, Elias. Hello, Trudie.
Listen, we just got through another weekend, and I'm going to start off by asking the question, just the question of how are you doing? How are you holding up? But with a specific point on mental health. Jean-Marc, how's your family handling this? How are you handling being inside your home, 24 hours a day? How's it going with you?
Well, very good. Thank you, Elias, for asking. And I guess we should continue to get aware of our relative, our feeling, but very good. My daughter is back from Sherbrooke University, so she's here with us. And I'm very, very good, fine. I've got friends who had the COVID-19, so I'm a little bit scared for them. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I think that you're right to focus on mental health. We talked about that last week. We focus on physical health because of that COVID, that virus. But the remedy that we are using, is to isolate ourselves, is already starting to create problem for mental health, and will expand on that for the next weeks and months to come.
And we've seen it with the crisis hotlines, right? Whether it's a kids help phone for kids or other crisis hotlines, they're seeing the number of calls increase. So I just want to take that little moment of time to focus on, hey, we are all feeling those pangs of anxiety. I'm getting them too, but we got to get through this together. Trudie.
Well, I think that we've been lucky in our household really because we don't have any financial worries yet. And even though, Kev got laid off along with all the other education workers when the schools shut down, and Quinn got laid off with the provincial shutdown, but we're okay so far. And eventually, the EI and the government payments will kick in, and that. But it's the uncertainty about that I think that is wearing on. Are you going to be able to get through on the phone lines? Kev spent hours on hold just trying to get hold of the EI people, and that was before Ontario and Quebec announced their big shutdown. So I can't imagine what it must be like now. So. And we're basically okay. He just wants to get the paperwork rolling, So I think that I feel for families on that level, because not knowing about these new benefits, not knowing if you're going to be eligible, when the checks are going to be issued, not knowing how you're going to pay the bills, that would be a huge burden on me. That would really bother me. So far we've dodged that. And right now I think it's just the confinement, the normal everyday irritations that you have living with another human being are magnified because you can't get out. And, I love my husband. We've been married 26 years, but you don't want to spend every second of every day forced into close confinement.
It's so funny. I think, the grass is always greener on the other side, because I'm hearing complaints from single people who are like, I'm all alone. I'd love to, have someone in my house. I'd love to be be in a couple right now, so I'd have someone. And then on the flip side, I got a phone call from a friend who does not live in this province. So if you're listening to me and you think I'm outing someone, I'm not. It's someone who does not live in Quebec. They called me. I'm like, where are you calling me from? Oh, I'm in my car. I'm like, oh, where are you going? He's like, I just went on a drive. I needed to get out of the house.
Yeah, we've done that.
So like an isolation in their vehicle just to have an hour away from their partner. So I think everyone is going through it. It doesn't matter if you're single. If you're single, you want someone with you. If you're in a couple, you need some time apart. It just shows you, just the human mind. We need balance in our lives. And I think that's what we're seeing.
I think, Elias, that one thing that is very important is to put in our days a moment where we take the air outside, walk on the street, even if we are not near somebody, we keep the distance. But the strength of spring will help in this time of uncertainty at the moment that crisis will end. This weekend it was gray, not very funny, but if the sun can come out, I think it's going to help our morale.
And, I want to applaud all the people who have put rainbows in their windows. When we walk around our neighborhood, there must be at least 24 houses just on our little walk now that have the homemade rainbows. And a couple of the houses on one street have started doing what they've started doing in England, which is turning their Christmas lights back on. So they've either put them back out or they've plugged them in again. And so at night, it really is a lovely sign of kind of community solidarity, and I appreciate that a lot. And I think that the other enemy is boredom. All the experts have been saying, "Oh, this is a great time, new project, to learn a new hobby, learn a new craft, take up an exercise routine," but inertia takes over, and the couch is very comfortable, and then you get bored. And then I always go to the kitchen, right? Okay, I'm bored. What am I going to eat? It's a big struggle. So just, keeping yourself on track, keeping your mind occupied, and keeping yourself from throttling your significant other.
Can I make a point? Think about, sort of timing is everything. On Friday, Netflix released the first original Netflix film that was made in Quebec. It's called The Decline in English, Jusqu'au déclin in French. It was released again on Friday in the midst of all this, and it's about a group of survivalists who think that the end of the world will come, and they end up in northern Quebec somewhere. I mean, it's a great film, and it's an easy watch, by the way. So a shout out to that film if you're looking for something to watch, and it's so eerie in the sense that the timing is right for these moments. I would strongly recommend it. Jean-Marc, anything to add?
Well, just to say that it's very important to make our day, make something of our day, having a plan in the morning, and I think when we do that, it helps pass the day. And we've got to focus. At first, it was 2 weeks. Now it's up to mid-Easter. We all know that it will come. We will talk about May, so we will arrive at a point where it's going to be tougher. So it's important to focus, to find ourselves the light at the end of the tunnel.
I went on a jog yesterday, so that was like, okay, I'm going to get out of the house. I'm going to go on a jog, and jogged from my place. Did 20 minutes total, 10 minutes away, and then said, okay, time to jog right back. I sort of like timed it so that it was really gray and it was about to rain, but it hadn't started to rain yet. So it was Deadsville on the road. I was pretty much driving. I was jogging like in the opposite direction on streets in the road so that if someone came out of their house, I'd be away from them. And I caught one really, just a sort of Montreal moment. As I'm jogging back, I see a taxi pull up to a condominium, and the taxi stops, and I'm jogging towards, and a taxi driver gets out of the vehicle. He goes around the side, and he takes a senior comes out with her groceries, and he walks her, and I see him walk her into the apartment building. And so all of the things that come into your brain, like, well, did she have no one else to rely on? With the taxi driver that's doing this all day and interacting with clients, what's going through his head, and how he said, you know what, I got to help this senior, and he decides to come outside and help her. And I'm just like, you know what, there are really positive signs that we are going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together based on that alone.
The stories the office is buzzing about. The Big Five on the Elias Macco Show.
All right, Jean-Marc Fournier is on the phone line. Trudie Mason is in studio. It is the Big Five. Guys, let's talk about some of the expanded powers that the City of Montreal and the police now have to ensure that people are complying with physical distancing measures. It's come up a couple of times on the Big Five, where we talk about snitching, right? And what are the lengths that you should go when it comes to snitching? Some cities have set up specific snitch lines. Here in Montreal, you're being told to call 911 like it was any other police complaint. They don't seem to be overtaxed with those calls. But I guess my question is, what would you have to see in order to actually make that phone call? How egregious does it have to get for you to say, oh boy, I guess I got to call 911 here? Jean-Marc.
Well, first, when I heard that they would use the 911 line, I was surprised a little bit. maybe because I'm very not comfortable with reporting my neighbors, and I don't feel that this is an urgent line, and I think there's something else to do with that line. So maybe a specific line will be better. That being said, Elias, to your question, it must be very, very grave if I've got to call, because I think that on the other side, even if I see something at my neighbors, I think that relationship with neighbors are very important, not just for one day, for a long period. And I guess I would probably talk to the neighbors if I saw something before calling the police in. Yeah. I would be, maybe I think it will be more comfortable for me to speak with the neighbor and not calling the police.
And you know what, Jean-Marc, to what you just said, on Saturday when François Legault took a day off and it was Geneviève Guilbeault who was doing the press conference, at the tail end, she took the time to say, hey, guys, this is not the time to start friction in society with your neighbors. So, you know, like the message was, listen, let's do things tactfully, because on top of everything we have to deal with during a pandemic, you don't need arguments in the streets as well.
Yeah, I think it would have to be pretty big for me to, like, it would probably have to be a very large gathering of obviously not one household in a public space. And I don't even think I'd call the cops. I think I'd call, we have security.
Public security?
Yeah, I'd call public security because, and you know, again, a lot of the time we don't understand the circumstances. And we heard a story last week about a woman who sent her 4 children to the park to play, and they ended up getting scolded by some complete stranger who came up to them. You shouldn't be playing it. Well, you know, they're all in the same house, and you have, that's frightening for little kids to have strangers yelling at them. So I think, you know, tact, discretion and tact, and an understanding that maybe you don't have all the facts. You know, I can't see into any of my neighbors' yards because we have hedges. So I can't, I hear a bunch of people talking in the backyard. Is that all the same members of the family, or are they having friends over? Am I going to call the cops to go check? No, I'm not.
Yeah. To me, if I were to see anything that would qualify as, like, you know, multiple cars showing up to all get together and then it turns into like a party, I'd be like, yeah, I would make that call. I'd be like, okay, call 911 just to say, hey, I hate that I'm doing this would be my first line, but I'm just telling you what the situation is. Because, you know, listen, most people are getting it. And I think it's like 90% of people are completely getting it. It's those 10% that aren't getting it that can also be so damaging. They can be, you know, spreaders of this and make us have to stick through this and have social distancing measures for months longer if they don't get the message. So anything to make that happen. Guys, I want to get to the issue of transparency and how transparent should the provincial government be when it comes to projections. You know, yesterday, Premier Legault focused on some of the positive signs that, you know, it looks like we are doing a decent job of flattening the curve, but he did not want to disclose any of the plans or projections. And Dr. Horacio Arruda says that he doesn't want to share those plans because it could create panic, first of all. If you say, okay, here's the projection, here's our best case scenario, here's our worst case scenario. We've seen what's happened in the US, by the way, over the last few days when they've shared some projections. So guys, how much transparency do you think we've hit the right spot when it comes to transparency from the government? You know, some parents are saying, hey, I got a letter from my child's school saying that we have a student that tested positive, but we don't know who the student is because, of course, the nature of privacy. We've got privacy laws in this country that don't allow them to divulge everything. Are we hitting it on the right spot here when it comes to transparency versus opaqueness, when it comes to giving the public all the information the government has? Jean-Marc?
Well, I've been in government for many years, Elias, and it's too bad, but I believe in the fact that sometimes you cannot say everything. There's a day to say something, and the day after you can maybe add to that. And I think that that's what the government is doing. You know, at the beginning, they told us we've got 2 weeks. At the end of the first week, they said, well, we're going to add 3 weeks. We're going to Easter, mid-April. We all know, you know, Trudie, every listener knows that it's going to be longer than Easter. We're going to go to May. We know that. And they will say that in some days. But it allows us to prepare and accept. So I accept that way of governing. I think it's normal. But I've got questions that I think they should ask better. Now, one of those questions I've got it every day is why? Why is Quebec having so many cases? How come we are in lead in Canada for people who died and affected? I understand maybe there was the La Relâche who was sooner than in Ontario, but that is not, for me, the complete answer. And I've got another one. If we are in lead because we were in it earlier, are we going to get out sooner than others? Because for myself, it's not what I've learned today, but when it's going to end. And if they cannot tell us when it's going to end, they should prepare us to a gradually back on the normal economic life. They should do something on that. So I'm okay with not all the information, but I would like to have other kind of information.
As a journalist, of course, I would like access to everything because you can never have too much information. But I have to acknowledge that when you're talking about projections for hospitalizations and deaths, 99% of them are going to be wrong. One of them is going to be right. Hopefully, if your experts have done their work correctly, they're going to present you with 50 possibilities, and one of them will be correct, and the others will all be wrong, and many of them will be wildly wrong, either much too pessimistic or much too optimistic. I don't think there's a lot of value in talking about the range of projections, and that's why the premier at one point said that Quebec could be looking at 25,000 deaths, not cases, not people in hospital, 25,000 deaths. I dwelling on that number, I don't think it is productive. I do agree with Jean-Marc that I would like to see some other types of information. We know from that study, the Leger survey that was done for the Canadian Studies last week, that young men are not getting the message about protecting themselves and the people around them. I would like to know if there have been any young people among the hospitalizations. I think that would be a helpful number. I think if we could see more of an age breakdown for that could really drive home those.
We did get some data from Theresa Tam, who said, of everyone that's tested positive for coronavirus, 7% have been hospitalized. Of the 7% that were hospitalized, 30% were under 40. And, that is a wake-up call to a lot of people. 30%
but
are under 40.
But you know what? Being under 40 and being 19 are two completely different things. Right. I think if a 20-year-old found out that a 20-year-old was on life support or in critical care up at the Jewish, that would be a powerful message.
I do have to say, I think sometimes we do have to sort of read between the lines as the government tries to tell us without telling us. Yesterday, Dr. Horacio Arruda, he said, basically, I think what's going to have to come out of this is businesses will have to learn new ways to work, and they're going to have to learn from what they're going through now and continue with that moving forward. Now, this to me is just a little indication, if you read between the lines, that this is going to be a longer fight, right? If he's trying to brace employers for figuring out ways to continue to do business in a different way. And I think that's what you've got. I think that's the right note for the government to hit. You can't just come out and say, this is it. It's going to be X amount of months, because you don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. But you've got to sort of give little hints to get the public to brace themselves.
So. And Elias, I know for talking with some that business people are really in a difficult position. Because they don't know how long it's going to be. I think they are catching the hint that we are talking about now, about the fact that they are not telling us, but we understand between the lines that it will be longer. I think that some businesses are looking at taking decision to lay off people because they are reading between lines. So I'm just saying, are they reading the right thing? Is it possible to have better understanding? Is it possible to give, let's say, with essential services, we are 40% of the economy is rolling right now. can we say that, let's say, at the beginning of May, it's going to be 50 and 55 and 60%, so that there's a gradually come back? So between the line, employer will understand that probably it will end sooner for them than for others. We've got to hear things like that.
All right, guys, let's turn our attention to south of the border. Snowbirds. Journal de Montréal has a wonderful story of snowbirds that are like, nah, I'm staying in Florida. I ain't going anywhere. I'm staying right here. I'm riding it out. What do you do with snowbirds that are not heeding the advice of both the Canadian government and the Quebec government to come home? Jean-Marc.
Well, I hope, and I read the news in Journal de Montréal, I hope that everybody who stay there have their insurance coverage correct, because they're going to have a problem. Now, let's face it. You heard during the weekend that Quebec is closing some region because they've got less case. If you are in Saguenay and you've got less case, why would you like to come back to Montreal where there's more? So, of course, nobody wants to come back. You're in the south of the United States with the country in lead with the most cases, and it's going to extend. It's going to be worse and worse than that. Why would you like to stay there when you have a chance to come back where the insurance is full coverage and there's less possibility to catch the virus? I really don't understand.
I don't know. I don't either. I think that, well, the only thing you can do is let them back in like every other traveler, because they're Canadians and they have a right of entry into their home country. So you let them back in, you force them into the 14-day quarantine that the government is insisting on. And what else can you do? I think in some cases, some people looked at that and said, I can isolate in Florida, but if I were to, for example, drive my car home or drive my motorhome home, that means I'm in and out of hotels, I'm in and out of gas stations, I'm driving by the New York area, through the New York area, I may have to stop. They might have thought that the trip was more fraught with risk than just staying put and self-isolating, but I hope they have money, man, because they might have to stay there for a long time.
And Florida, by the way, the governor of Florida hasn't put through some of the decrees his health officials have been begging him to do. You still see beaches this weekend because it's all up to the counties. And we see in certain parts of Florida, the beaches are still open and packed. And I say, man, what's the future hold for the residents of Florida? Okay, Jean-Marc, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Trudie Mason, thank you for taking a walk over.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Appreciate it. See you tomorrow.